Dutch king has apologised for his country's role in the transatlantic slave trade, which he called abhorrent and that he feels personally and intensely affected by the horrors that happened back then. So I personally can't understand why any figurehead would apologise for something that their country did hundreds of years ago, which has nothing to do with them today. Now, if the Dutch king wishes to apologise for what happened back then, that's entirely his decision. But now there are news going around that apparently this is putting pressure on King Charles, our king, to do the same. So that is completely ludicrous, and let's not even go in that direction. Because if we're going to look at a time when empires were normal, when we know for a fact that we can't judge the past by the standards of today, because to do such a thing is totally, well, it's completely lacking in common sense, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense to actually judge the past by the standards of today, because we're constantly progressing forward as civilization, and that's what civilization is all about. So there is absolutely no reason why Charles, the king, should apologise for Britain's role, and if he must say anything at all about the transatlantic slave trade, then it's best to give a fair and biased opinion about it and give people the facts, not the woke garbage that we've been subjected to the last few years, but the facts, such as the fact that it was the British Empire that ended slavery, that it was the British grassroots campaigns who campaigned for over 20 years to the British Empire to get them to stop the slave trade when other countries weren't interested in ending the trade. It was very profitable. It was something that other empires and countries wanted to continue to do. But it was Britain who used its power and its wealth in order to end the transatlantic slave trade. It was Britain whose empire stood up against Nazi Germany and was strong enough to stand against Nazi Germany until the United States was able to get involved. These are basic facts. I also found it very interesting that the Dutch king didn't once mention about the Dutch Empire's role in ending the Barbary slave trade. So that is something I find very interesting, when considering the fact it was a Dutch fleet, along with the Royal Navy, who bombed the port of Algiers in the 1800s, which broke the power of the Barbary slave trade. Barbary slave pirates who had been kidnapping British and European people for the best part of 300 years. The Arab slave trade, where they used to go across the coasts of England in Devon and Cornwall and steal people from their homes and sell them to Morocco. This happened for almost 3 centuries. There was no empire to save these people. They never made it home. They were not as fortunate as the slaves who were set free or liberated in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, they appear to be going forgotten in history, just as it is being forgotten how it was the Dutch fleet and the British Empire who broke the power of the Barbary slave trade. That has not been mentioned once. Why? Because it doesn't fit with the woke agenda. This is absolutely ridiculous. No one should be apologising for anything. And if anything, people should be thanking the British Empire for what it did when it chose to use its wealth and power in the last 150 years of its life in order to not only end slavery, but also stand up to the worst regime the world had ever seen in the form of the Nazis. Perhaps this is something that the Dutch king might like to take into consideration. And I also feel that if our king decides to go down this route and apologise for something we should not be apologising for, that would be a grave mistake. Because at the end of the day, if you look at why people are demanding these apologies, there are groups out there, sneaky, greedy groups, who are doing it because they want reparations. So who is really making money from the slave trade these days? Only them. Because they are trying to profit now from these apologies and from these countries getting down on their knees and apologising and wanting to pay reparations. It's absolute nonsense, and we shouldn't be tolerating it.